Right, there we go. No. Cool. So let's go real quick through some introductory stuff, especially those who are new to the group. Maybe they probably appreciate this information. So our main group site is on Meetup, and the link is up there. If you haven't done so, please register. You're going to be notified, and you're going to get, you just be able to see all the meetings in one place. If you get value from our meetings, make sure you spread the word, let your coworkers know. Very often you guys ask, where do we find the recordings now that we are virtual? The recordings are right here on this URL. So if you go to HTTPS, actually let me go and pause this because I'm sure somebody will ask that question. In the chat window, they're going to find all the recordings since it became virtual, right? Okay. And if you want to get involved, always looking for speakers. If you know someone, if you want to present, let me know. Once we start, by the way, about the getting back in person, it looks like some good developments are happening. Companies are kind of opening their offices back. Microsoft seems to be opening their offices as well. But the last thing that I heard is that the situation about the office in Georgia, in Alpharetta, it wasn't very clear when they're going to open it. And even if they open it, we have to find a blue badge, someone from Microsoft who will let us in. Unfortunately, Samara, our previous blue badge, she actually is leaving Microsoft. So there's going to be some logistics for the time being. Let's go and meet virtual, as we've been doing for the past couple of years. On the subject of jobs, does anyone have any announcement? Anybody looking for Microsoft BI or Power BI talent that you guys want to share? No one? Okay, then. Gonna move on. Couple of events of interest. April 6th, Microsoft Business Application Launch Event. This is for Power BI platform and Microsoft Dynamics. Highly recommend you guys. Actually, that is on Wednesday. Join, and there will be some good sessions on Power BI, on Microsoft and the community. And there is I'm not sure if you know about community called Georgia Technology Group, Georgia Technology Tech Group. So we have a summit on April 26, 27. I thought you might want to check it out. Other than that, let's move to the top news since we last met. So we typically meet the first Monday of every month. Previous was beginning of March. So what happened since then? Well, I guess the most important thing that happened is that what do we get every year around this time? We get a magic quadrant from Gartner for data analytics and business intelligence. Where are we? Where's Microsoft? Right there on the top, right? So it's good to be if you want to be, if you actually, if you're a vendor, you want to be in this leaders quadrant, and obviously the top, the further you go to the right and to the top, the better you are. So as you can see, the distance is kind of increasing, which makes me very, very happy. A few years ago, the situation wasn't like that, but it looks like Microsoft is ahead of competition. So the bottom line, if your CEO comes and say, Theo, we're going to be considering Tableau, Click, and so forth for business intelligence, let's go and do a comparison. What do? Quick as a bunny, you go to Gartner and tell them, okay, this is what Gartner thinks about the state of affairs on the BI market. So we should probably go to Microsoft, right? So that was easy one. Then we have a few, not anything earth-shattering happening as far as features in Power BI, but there are three things that kind of caught my attention. I'm going to show you a short demo in a moment that were released: error bars, visual settings in mobile view, and enhancements to the Azure Map visual. So this meeting, we're going to talk about Dax Template. Mike Carlo, Power BI MVP, is going to do it in a moment. Next meeting is going to be May 2nd. We're going to talk about Power BI integration with Microsoft Teams, something that Microsoft is taking near and dear to their heart. They want to actually bring reporting and data analytics where people collaborate, which of course is Microsoft Teams. And Lukasz Pawlowski, who I knew from the reporting services days, 15 years ago. Now he is obviously with Power BI team he owns this area. So this is going to be essentially the product manager of this feature, Power BI integration with Microsoft Teams. He's going to actually be presenting. Cool. Well, before we get to the main presentation, I want to show you a promise that these three features that we talked about. So the first thing that I want to show you is the error bars. So imagine you have a chart of some kind, could be a line chart, could be a column chart. And let's go ahead and put the average sales amount on the chart. So this is great, but typically, most of the time a data analyst spends analyzing information is trying to find outliers, things like exception analysis and stuff like that. And in Power BI, we have a lot of features to do this. We have even anomaly detection visual, but something that you might find useful that Microsoft recently added is the ability to plot the deviation of the value. So for example, in this value in October, the average sales amount when customer came to our site and bought something is 2,000. Well, maybe I want to see what was the maximum spend and minimum spend to see where this data point actually lies between, right? So how do we do that? Well, if we go to this is, by the way, a preview feature, so you have to go and enable it to the Power BI desktop preview features. But once you do that, and once you go to the analytics area of the visualization pane, you will see that there's something called error bars. And the first thing we're going to do here, we're going to turn this on. And then, as you can see, it has two buckets, upper bound and lower bound. So here we can put measures like DAX measures that we can use to show this deviation, right? So what I've done, I have already created very simple DAX measures. So basically we have a max sales amount that returns the maximum of sales, and I have a minimum sales amount. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to drag the maximum sales amount in the upper bound area, and then I'm going to do the same for the minimum sales amount. I'm going to drag it in the lower bound area. So what you're seeing now here is that pop this out a little bit. As you can see that now the chart has these bars. Microsoft calls them error bars. In my opinion, a better name will be a deviation bars. Basically shows you where this data point, the actual, falls between the maximum and the minimum. And here we have two options. First of them is to plot these bars absolutely, meaning that we just size the y-axis on the chart and just plot them. And the second one is relative. Relative means that we're going to calculate the difference. So for example, if the maximum value is 100 and the average, the actual value is 60, but the minimum maybe is 20. So then what's going to happen if I do relative, we're going to do 60 minus, what was it, like 40? So that will be 20. So this bar then will be 20. It's going to be relative to the data point. And then the bottom one is going to be 40 minus 20. It's going to be 20, right? So we have a couple of options how to display these bars. These bars are customizable. You can also, there are different options in here. You can edit the style. You want to show a dot instead of a line, how big that's going to be, the border color, we can go ahead and change, or the color, the line, the shade area, markers, and so forth. But that's what this feature does in a nutshell. Got any questions? Let me know. The question from Ashley, is this going to be recorded? Ashley, absolutely. And right below your question, I put the link where you can find all the recordings. So just give me an hour after this meeting, and I'm gonna put it, you're gonna find the recording in there. Cool. So this feature was called error bars. The second one is the mobile view. So you guys probably already know, those of you using Power BI for a while, if you don't create a mobile view for your reports, what's going to happen when somebody goes and uses Power BI mobile on iPhone or whatever device to look at that report? Well, what's going to happen is going to show in a landscape, right? So it's not going to reflow, basically. If your phone is in a portrait orientation, the report is not going to reflow. And how do we solve this? Well, we solve it by creating a mobile layout for every page, for those pages that need to be mobile friendly. How do we do that? We go to the mobile layout, and then we have this beautiful area that kind of simulates your mobile device. And then we put the visualizations that we want in portrait mode. And once we do that, when we view this report in Power BI mobile, if the device is in portrait mode, then that's what the user is going to see. So this has been there for a while. The new thing is that now we have even more control over the mobile layout. So we can make changes. So for example, for this visual in here that I inherited from the main page, what about if I don't want to show the y-axis? Maybe I don't have a real estate. So I can turn it off. So you have limited changes that you can make to the presentation of these visuals, and those changes you make, they're only going to be applicable to the portrait mode. If I go back, for example, I turn off the x-axis, maybe some changes here. If I go back to the desktop layout, then the visual is not going to be affected. So these changes, the presentation changes, only apply to the mobile layout. So a little bit more flexibility. How do you set up those DAX measures that you are dragging in? How I set them up is they're just simple DAX measures. So those of you who are new to Power BI, in Power BI, we have a language called DAX, and we can go on and create metrics, all sorts of metrics, year to date, quarter to date. How do we do that? The easiest thing is just right click on the table and you just say new measure. And when you do new measure, just like in Excel, you're going to get a nice formula bar in here. And this is where you write a formula in language called DAX to do whatever you want it to do. So first you got to set up these DAX measures, and then you can go ahead and drag them to the visualization pane. Okay. And the last thing that I want to touch base, the last feature is the Azure Maps enhancements. So those of you who have been following Power BI for a while, they know that we have not one, not two, not three, but maybe even four maps. So we started with a simple map called a map right here on the visualization pane. Then we have a field map. Along the way, we introduce a shape map that allows you to bring your own shapes. And we have Azure Maps, so 4 maps. So how do we choose between all of this? Well, it really depends on what kind of features you want. So the Azure Map is the latest in this set of maps. And what the interesting thing about the Azure Map is that it allows you to do things like heat maps. So for example, if I go to the visual settings, I can show the data as a heat map. as I can even put a reference layer. So for example, if you bring your own GeoJSON file, for example, to plot police districts, I had a engagement recently for a police department. They wanted to plot crimes on top of their districts, so they have their own districts. So how do we do that? You create your own GeoJSON file for those maps. You plug them in here, and then you can overlay with the data you're showing. So we've got also traffic layer. So if I want to show the traffic in real time, just like when I go to Google Maps or Azure Maps, I can do that. So right now, obviously, I have to zoom in to see what the traffic looks like. Looks like everything is green, except, of course, New area where things are not looking so good, but you got the idea. So what changes do we have in here in Azure Maps? Well, now we can plot bubbles, which is something that we had in the original map for a very long time, but now we have it in Azure Maps. And not only we can plot bubbles, but obviously we can also drill down from, let's say, from a country to a city, just like we can do that with a regular map. So those features are not really new. We have them for a while, as I said, with the regular map. But if you are using Azure Maps for other features, now we have the ability to plot pie charts. You can size them by bubble size. You can put a legend so the pie chart is kind of segmented, just like the original map that debuted with Power BI. Okay, questions? Any questions about what I showed you so far? So you can unmute yourself. You can also ask the question in the chat window. I'll take this as a no. So hold the questions then for me or until the end of the meeting. Meanwhile, I would like to invite Mike Carlo to jump in and to tell us about himself and also show us a great presentation about Dax Template. Hey, Mike, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So let me jump in here. I will throw a quick presentation screen on the screen here. Oh, that's not what I wanted. I needed my function key. So Shift F5. There we go. Presentation mode. It's kind of the way here. All right. So for those of you who know, this presentation is going to be around Dax Quick Templates. This is a project that I helped create with the community. I love the Power BI community. We have a lot of great things going on. And so it's super exciting for us to kind of be able to give back in a very, hopefully, efficient way. So this presentation is all going to be around just Dax templates. What do they mean? How do we use them? And how can we create them? So jumping right into it here, it'll be a little bit about myself. So this is myself. This is me pre-beard, I guess. I mean, now I'm clean shaven now, but this is when I had the beard for a while. And so I run the website called PowerBI.tips. Those of you who are online and have Googled some things around Power BI, hopefully you run across the website that I run. With that, I'm very vocal in the community now. So we have just recently started a new podcast. So it's called the Explicit Measures Podcast. And we are just about to hit the 100th episode. So if you haven't checked it out, feel free to go check it out. We're on your major platforms for Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor FM, basically any of your main podcast streaming platforms. We're pretty much on all of them. So feel free to go check us out, and we'd love for you to get engaged. We do this podcast every Tuesday and Thursday at 7:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. So that would be 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time Zone for those of you joining on the East Coast. We just have a lot of fun. It's really around candid conversations around Power BI. The design and intent of it is just to be a water cooler kind of conversation. We're just hanging out, talking about technical issues, people issues, what is changing the technology, what do we find is valuable to us, what do we find is not valuable. So there's definitely some really good areas there. And one of the topics that probably is by far the most important or most popular is anything around DAX. A lot of questions, a lot of conversation. People seem to engage with those conversations well. If you want to find me on the social media things, you can pick me up on Twitter, LinkedIn, and we also have a YouTube channel as well, where we do a bunch of other instructional things additionally. Now, the reason I put this slide in here, oh, actually not this slide, next slide. This slide here, these are all the tools that Power BI Tips provides to the community for free. If you don't know about Business Ops, this is a tool that helps you learn and train and has some external tools that we provide back to the community to make it easier for you to install and manage all your external tools. We have a number of other tools. We have a themes gallery, so themes.powerbi.tips. This is where we help you build color palettes and color themes for your Power BI files. We have gallery.powerbi.tips, and gallery is a whole bunch of colors. You can see at it's the bottom of the page here. I got my zoom it on. It's this thing where we have a gallery of colors. It will scroll infinitely. I mean, there are more colors that we've created or color palettes that the community has created than you could shake a stick at, and you can just keep scrolling forever. And the cool part is, as soon as you hit a color on the color palette, it will actually bring up a Power BI report and render that theme on that Power BI report so you can get a feel for what that report might look like. So that's another one there. We have a number of other tools, but those are kind of the main tools that we have. The only other two that are probably relevant here are our scrims and our layouts, which are basically free giveaways where we build a background image for you, or we build a layout of a report and kind of put some visual objects on the page for you to make it easier to get started.
And Mike, one thing that I think will be interesting to our audience is that you guys also have a setup to install the most popular external tools in
Yes.
Power BI Desktop, if I'm not wrong.
Yes.
So that's a very cool thing. So if you guys remember, in Power BI Desktop, we have the ability to plug in external tools like Dax Studio, Tabular Editor, and so forth.
Yes.
So you can go and actually download the setup, and it's going to you can choose which tools to install, right, Mike?
Yeah, and the idea here is it's hard to keep track of all the different tools, right? I mean, our external installer already has, I think we have over 50 tools now, and there's continually more being added. We're actually in the process of adding Marco Russo's brand new tool called Bravo, and we'll have that added into the tool here fairly shortly. So we're committed to making it easier for you to develop in Power BI Desktop. And that's part of what Business Ops does. I mean, it does other things too. We embed, actually, I'll pull it up here because it's such a cool tool. I absolutely love it. Let's see if I still have it installed on this machine. I was doing there we go, Business Ops. So inside Business Ops, you not only get the external tools you can install, but you can also go in here and we actually have a whole learning section where we link to all of our videos and content that we produce for various external tools, Tabular Editor, Dax Studio, ALM Toolkit. We actually have the theme generator automatically built into the tool as well. So you can go in here and create your own themes right inside this tool. And when you hit download, it downloads them right to your machine and your computer. Then we have gallery.powerbi.tips. You can also access that right inside the tool as well. And as soon as it loads some color palettes here, the Azure function will take over. You can click that tool and then boom, you can then render a Power BI report directly in this tool and see what that color palette might look like for you. We also have added links to dax.guide. So I use this every day, honestly. This part of the tool is amazing. Marco Russo and SQL BI have made this part of the tool, so we have it linked here as well. And then also dax.do, which is another tool that Marco Russo's team has made, but we're making it available to you directly inside a single desktop application installer. So again, super easy, adds a lot of extra capability to your normal development cycle within Power BI, and it's all in one tool, which is kind of cool. All right. Great point to point out there. And then the last part here is we actually have swag. So we, in the podcast, we are actually giving away some free swag. We're going to do 5 giveaways on episode 100. I think we're currently at episode 97 right now. So you've got about a couple episodes left. But if you want to participate, if you want an opportunity to get a free mug or a shirt or a sweater, we'll give you any article that you want off of the website. But go out and tweet about your favorite episode, your favorite argument, your favorite content from the Power BI Tips Explicit Measures podcast. If you go tweet it on Twitter or LinkedIn, every tweet or every message you put out there, we will count that as a submission, and then we're going to randomly select people to be winners in our 100th episode. So anyways, if you like free stuff, feel free to participate in our competition as well. All right. enough of all the Power BI tips things. We do a lot of things in the community. I'll say that. Let's move straight on to, let's talk about today's topic, DAX and the DAX generator. We're right into demos. So I'm going to take this format as I'm going to just kind of barrel through. I will have the chat window open as well. So if you want to ask a question or have me slow down or repeat something, please feel free to do so inside the chat window inside your Teams meeting, and I will monitor that. Okay, that being said, let's jump into the demo. So first and foremost, we have to have a Power BI model. So we'll start over here. And I want to just, before I go into the presentation portion, I just want to highlight what does this data model look like, and just so we can see what it's doing here. So I'm going to click on the settings option here, and because I've got this all, there we go. Okay, we have one disassociated table up here, star ratings, which is not attached to anything, and I believe there's actually one more other disassociated table here called calcs, and I was testing something earlier, so that one's also. These are two tables that have no relationships to the data model. They're just kind of out there. Everything else that we have here are tables that are linking with a proper star schema. And so this is our fact sales table, and then we can see all of our hidden columns here. But basically, we have a one-to-many relationship for all of these different dimensions, and we've hidden and built out as best as we can the data model here. So hiding index columns and turning auto summarization off on various columns. So this is kind of what we're starting with. Okay. Moving back over to the presentation. So what is DAX Generator? Well, we first have to understand a little bit about what is a DAX statement and what does that mean? How do we interpret this DAX statement into something that we can understand? So this is what I would call the anatomy of DAX, right? We have a measure equals something. This is the measure name. And then we apply some sort of formulas. It could be one DAX function, many DAX functions. And then inside that DAX function, we're going to call out what we're going to call model-specific indexes, right? So this is, the table name. That's something that's unique to my data model. The column name is unique to my data model. So if you look at this formula and say, well, how do we generalize this? Like, I've written a lot of DAX statements. I look at the formulas over and over again. And quite often, I'm writing the same DAX in multiple models over and over and over again. And so I'm doing a lot of the repeated stuff. But there's potentially other things you want to do with this as well. So this is, a good use case for tabular editor. But what about that regular business user who's just trying to learn new DAX? What about that person who's not comfortable getting an external tool to do all this stuff? So this is where we kind of introduce the DAX templates. So if we really pick this thing apart, we could parameterize the input name and make that something unique, right? Something that would be reusable in every data model, right? Every model I have may not have the sales column, but in every model that I do, I will likely have a column that I'll do a sum on. So I may want to change the name of the measure first and foremost. Then the next thing here is, well, maybe we want to adjust, what is inside the table statement, right? So over here at the table area, maybe this is what we want to adjust, or the table and sales combination. So this essentially could be another input parameter, right? This would be different per every single model that we look at. So when I stepped back and looked at DAX and said, okay, what is going on here? How could we automatically parameterize things? Maybe there's a tool around this. Maybe there's something we can do to help this be more efficient. So this is where, the idea of Dax Quick Templates came around. So let's do a really basic example here. We're going to pick a single column and we're going to apply a sum to that column. So what I would normally do is I'd open up my fields well. I would go into my fact table. I would find, oh, here's the column that I'm interested in, units sold on the right-hand side here. And what I'd have to do is I have to go into this table, right-click, new measure, and then I could just type in what I want here. Sum of, or let's just call it total units sold. And I'm going to make this bigger because this is really small to see right here on the screen right now. There, units sold equals sum, right? I'm going to write out what I want here. I'm going to go to units sold. And I'm guessing that's that first item in the list. Someone hit tab. Yep, that looks right. Close off the parentheses. And now I have my formula. So this is how I would write the equation normally. Okay, great. Now I have my total units sold. And then we can go use that like we normally would. I can grab my total units sold and I can go my dimension by product. And now I have my nice little chart total units sold by product. Great. Everyone's happy. So what would this look like? I mean, this is a very simple example, but let's, go further this one. What would a Dax Quick Template look like around this? So one of the external tools, and this is one of the external tools that we do here. If you have installed external tools, you'll have an additional ribbon on your Power BI desktop called External Tools. The tool that we're going to be primarily talking around is Power BI side tools, and particularly the one called Dax Generator. That's the tool that we're actually using here. So how do we get these tools and how do we put them in desktop? Well, I'm going to come back to our Power BI Business Ops. So if you download Power BI Tips Business Ops, and that comes right off our website. I'll pull the website up here real quick so you can see what it looks like. Just go ahead and Google Power BI Business Ops. And what you'll likely see right away is we're number 1 on that list. So click on that. And then this will be able to give you the tool that's here, and you can download this tool. I think we are well into the 20,000 downloads at this point. It's quite a popular tool. So you can download it here. Once you install it, it does require admin privileges because you are adding some data points into Power BI Desktop. But once you've added this tool, or once you've installed it, you'll be able to see right here, you can add external tools, and you can scroll down the list here until we hit the gentleman named Dieter Tiern. And Dieter is the gentleman who's developed the tool, and I've kind of helped him develop a lot of the Dax Generator pieces here. So this is the tool that he has created that we're going to use. Once you click the check boxes here, check and check, you'll click a little Add External Tools. It'll say it's installed, and then you have to restart desktop. So I've already done that, but that's how you would get the tool. I'm going to close out of this now. And so Dieter has these 2 tools, and so we're going to focus on just the one around Dax Generator. So when I click on Dax Generator, it will load up on the wrong monitor, but it will load up on our screen here these Dax templates. Now, I have done some user-generated templates. If I click this little icon in the upper left-hand corner, I could look at the built-in templates. So if I click on that, these are just standard templates that have been created by Dieter. They're just some simple examples to kind of get you started here. So if you want to use one of his calculations, you can click, well, let's look at the first day of the month. So when you click on the Dax statements here on the left-hand side, you'll instantly see over here in the right, there is some fields at the top of the window. And then down below, we have like description, instructions, and the template itself. So down below here, this is the author. The author is giving you information about what does this template do and why is it important. So this is a simple template, and it adds the calculated column to a table, usually the calendar table, that represents the first day of the month. So the assumption here is this is an added for calculated column. So what you would do here is you would go into the green box at the top here. You could then click in this green area, and it will bring up a window that will allow you to pick your date column from your date table, and it will automatically inject from your data model that column name and date. And then when you click the word generate here, it'll create a column for you and tell you where to put this column inside the various tables. So let's go back to our simple sum here. So I go back here to the very beginning here. Let's see, we have a sum variation. Let's not do that one. Let's go back up to my custom templates. So I'm going to go to the user templates, the ones that I've created. I'm going to click on those user templates, and I actually have a Git repo. So don't worry, all the templates you see here are already available on the internet. You can go get these templates verbatim as they live today. But if I go down here to the very end of these templates here, I have made a simple sum template right here. So it's just doing a total. If I click on simple sum, you can see this creates a sum on top of a numerical column. If there are any instructions, you can add them here. Select a column from your data model. That's really basically all it's telling you to do. The template looks like this. So this is the name of the template, sum of column, whatever that column is. And we can go up here and we can modify this again. So we'll go back to our fact table. We'll say fact sales, units sold. And what it will do now is it'll actually allow us to inject that information. Now I can change the name of the table too. So the measure name is this very top item here. So I know that we're doing the units sold, And so in this case, I may want to do sum of all units sold. I can just modify that right here. Then I can click the word generate, and you'll see that it has replaced all the text fields exactly as we see earlier. Sum of all units sold drops in the sum table, and then the fact and table name right there as well. Then I can click create or update. And what it will do now is it'll ask me, where do you want to put this measure? Well, we're going to go put it back in our fact sales table. So I'll highlight that next. And then it'll say measure successfully added. And what you saw, if you catched it, the model behind the window here actually just added that in. So we now can go over here and we can say sum of all units sold has now been automatically added. And if you watched carefully enough, it actually added that item in line automatically there. So now I can go back over to my chart here, and I can grab my all units sold, and then I can add product again, and there we go. So with a couple clicks of some buttons, you can automatically add things. So again, a very basic example, not too heavy, but where things get a little more interesting is what happens when these DAX formulas get more complex, or you want to use someone else's formula in your model. So let's talk about another example of where this might make sense. We have another example where we have star ratings. So let's just give some data on the table here inside this data table. We'll go to star ratings. I'm going to add the product here, and then I'm going to add the rating. So we've got this nice little table here where we have jackets are 2, pants are 1, shoes are 3, socks are 5. So just some kind of scale, right? Low is bad, hot, high numbers are good. It's a numerical value. But instead, I want to change the graphics so that it shows something else. Well, luckily, we have an example around this. So now what we can do is we can go back over to Dax Templates. And there is another one where we have some text fields. So in our section called text, we can actually have a star rating from 1 to 5. Now, this is an example template. I actually took this example from the community, Power BI Quick Measures community, and built it into a template so people can just use it. So I'll highlight this template. It gives me the instructions here, tells me how to use it. There's even some URLs that we apply here. So if you want to go read more about what this is doing, right there. This came from the Quick Measures gallery, and it's that article that is on the website. So actually, you can click that, and it takes you right to the article of where this measure was created, the author of it, and how to use it. So this is Chris Webb, who is now a Microsoft employee at Microsoft. And again, this was made back in 2017. So it's just kind of a really solid measure here. And look at this. Doggone it. It's got 58,000 views on this single posting. So it gets a lot of traffic. So we'll minimize this. We'll go back to our measure. And so now we need to figure out, okay, well, what do we want to add in here? So we go back into our data model again. We'll click on the star column. This is the column that has the ratings from 1 to 5, and that's listed in the instructions. If I click on that, I can then click on my star ratings and then the rating column. So it automatically grabs the right star name and the rating element right here and says, yep, that's what you want. And then we can click generate again. And so now all this code is written. Now, here's where I think this is why this is the world's fastest DAX. For you to figure all this stuff out, it doesn't take forever, but it takes some mental effort and thought to kind of go through this whole DAX statement and figure out what's going on here, right? We've got 4 variables at the front. We've got a return statement at the end. And you'll notice here that our stars rating is injected into the data model, or that DAX function right here. This is the input that we gave. Oops, I'm sorry. Right there. So it automatically placed the right text inside all this DAX statement and then created it for us. So now I can hit create or update, and it'll ask me again where I want to put the measure. I'll put it in the star ratings table. The measure has successfully been created, so we're happy. We're good to move forward. I can minimize this, and now we have our new measure called stars. So now what we can do is we can add the stars object directly to our data table, and there we go. So now we get the average rating of all the stars. Now the cool part here too is we get stars at every individual level. So it's taking the average of that number, but then even down here at the 11, it's actually doing average across all the data points. And so if you averaged out those items, you'd actually come down to just 3 stars. So this is still able to acquire the averaging across all rows because of the way the measure is written. So there we go. Very quick and easy example. And again, who knows how many models you have. You may use this multiple times. It's now just a couple button presses and you don't have to write a lick of code. It just injects the code for you. So it's really taking the example of what was a quick measure that Microsoft gives you. If you right click on a table, say new quick measure, it's basically doing the same thing there, except giving you like an external UI and user interface to help you use that code. Okay, great. We can generate a measure with some variables. Okay, fine. So what else can we do? Well, another good example of this is where you want to build your date calendar. So we actually have the ability of creating our own auto date calendar time. And this is another one that I find is a best practice when you're building models is you're always going to want to add your own date calendar. I mean, best practice is add your own date calendar and then apply it into the data model with some DAX. So here's another example where we can go back into the data model. So we'll go back into our examples here. We have another area of dates. We can talk about time. And so we can then add in, let's see here, calendar auto date table. Again, this is a very simple DAX measure. However, you can go here, instructions. It says create a date table based on the calendar auto function. All you need to do is enter the name of the date calendar. So let's just call it calendar like this. That should be fine. I'll hit generate. And again, it doesn't do a ton of extra fancy stuff here, but again, it writes a couple lines of code. So now we can auto inject the calendar auto function here, which goes through your data model, grabs all the dates, decides the min and max date range, and then builds out the day, month, and year columns inside that data table. So now if I hit create or update, it will automatically add the calendar table. And now when I minimize this, you'll see over here on the right-hand side, boom, we get a new calendar table added directly into the data model. Now you'll notice here, there's also a warning message that shows up. It says one or more of your tables have been added and you now need to refresh the data model, which is okay, and that's totally supported. Go back to the home ribbon. I hit refresh. It'll go out and grab my data again. And assuming everything's happy, that little message will then disappear and we're back to normal. So there we are. We now have our date calendar automatically added into our data model. And so we do have to link it to something. There is nowhere, it doesn't automatically build a relationship for us. So we can go over to our date calendar here. There's our dates. And then we'll take the date column and add it to our dates. We can check our relationship, date to date. Yep, looks fine. One to many, single direction. Yep, no problem. We'll click OK. And there we go. Now we have our own date calendar predetermined and built inside your data model. Now, one thing the tool does not do, it doesn't do column by column information yet. So when you go into the date calendar, you'll notice you have to click on the date field, and you'll probably need to change the date format. So this is a general dating format. The day is a whole number, good. Month, whole number, good. Year, also whole number. But one thing I like to do, particularly around these tables, is to make sure that the summarization is to none on each of these items. Just checking it right now. Looks like it is. Yeah, looks like it's fine. Okay, so it looks like we got a good date calendar. We can now go back over to our data model. We can now grab our dates, drop them on the table, and then we can go back to our fact table and then start adding our, sum of sales. And there we go. So now we've been able to add a whole date calendar into our model. And if there are custom date calendars you need, you can build out whatever custom form you want. There's actually a number of examples around date calendars. Marco Russo's has some date calendars that have been added from SQL BI. So this one allows you to enter in the name of the calendar. So calculated table name is calendar. But this also lets you say, what is the first fiscal month of the year? So if January 1st or March 1st is the first fiscal month, you can type in a number from 1 to 12 that tells you when that happens. Also, you can say indicate the first day of the week, 0 being Sunday. But if your first day of the week is Monday, a 1, or the first day of your week is a Sunday, or whatever you want to do, you can then adjust the day of the week by adjusting that number. So again, this allows you to put input parameters into the DAX statement. And so let's, might as well build here. This will be calendar number 2. the first fiscal month would be maybe March, and the first day of the week may be the second. And then what we want to do is we want to grab the fact table date time column. So I'll go in here, and my fact table date is hidden at this point. So let me just cancel that. Let me go over here. Fact table sales. Let me unhide from the model the column called date. Let me just show that one. Unhide that. So I'm unhiding the date column. There. So now we have the date column exposed inside our fact table. If I go back over here, hopefully it'll pick up on it. There we go. The fact sales date column was what we're doing. So now we've added that in as our input column. And now when I hit generate, again, you get, I don't know, 30 lines of code. The input variables are already generated for you. The first fiscal month, the first day of the week. Here's your first year. It's the minimum of that date range. And then from there, it builds out the rest of the information down below. So then I can hit create or update. And there you go. We now have another date calendar inside our data model. There it is. And it will require us to refresh now again as well. There we go. There's our second date calendar. And this one has a lot more information than the prior one. So we have a lot more columns to work with here. We can then generate our data by year now. So we can grab the year column and add that directly into here as well. So that'll also let us have sum of sales by year. Oh, you know what? It's doing that because I don't have a relationship. So probably should make a relationship first before I go all in on that. There we go. Now the relationship is made. Now the numbers will make sense. So there we go. We have another date calendar. And then you can build any number of other date elements that you want across that. You know, month of the year. Now you get month numbers there as well. Now this one is an interesting calendar because the month number, oops, that's not what I wanted to do, is actually this calendar. I know that I've done this before where you actually go through and to specify, okay, the date time calendar calculation, like month, quarter, year, month, quarter, date. Some of these are text values, some of them are number values. So this one you have to go through and kind of just spot check what is the data type of each of those columns and make sure that they're correct. So you go through here, instead of having it the month, I'll click on the month column, and the format of that should just be, I think, a whole number. Let's change this over to just a whole number. Sure, why not? There we go. And those are the month numbers from this month moving back in time or something like that. Well, maybe it is actually date time. Hold on. Date time. Maybe I should just do the month that it's in. Yeah, I think it's just the month number. It's not using the actual year data in there as well. Do they have a nice month? No, they don't. It's okay. So like a million date formats here you could pick from if you wanted to. Okay, good enough for that one. Anyways, you get the purpose. The idea is we can add full date calendars, other full tables in here as well. Now we're going to talk about another one that's got another good example here. So there are a number of formulas. I have found that there are use cases when I get a user requirement where they want to show every value. They want to show not only the sum of numbers, but they want to show the sum, and then they want to show, well, when there's no data, show a dash, or show something that's negative, or it's a value that's there, but even though we're not calculating it. So by default, when you look at this data model, we have our data is coming into our data model. It's actually aggregated by month. So we have full month increments, and those individual monthly increments are providing, a single data point, right? All of our data rolls up to just that month number. So, again, there are some requirements where we're missing all the days in this list between September and October. There's nothing there. We don't have all those other dates. And so what you may want to have as a requirement is I may actually want to show all the different dates in that date range. So let's kind of build this out here a little bit. I'll go here and I'll create a new table visual. Add that to the page. And once we have this added, we can then bring in our date calendar. So I'm going to go up here to the date calendar and I'm going to bring in the day level information. So if I click on one of these, if I click that date, yeah, there's no data. because what happens is inside the sum of sales column, if there's no data there, it's just going to resolve to a blank value. So if I bring in the sum of sales, add it right here, it will then take that full list of dates for every single day. Again, my date calendar is a continuous list of complete dates for all time. When I look at that date range, now I've got this, again, missing date ranges again. So how do we resolve that? We'll go back over to the Dax Generator. I have a Dax statement that I've already made for this, but I just want to use the code again. So here I will go into my other item here, totals, and here, measure to force to dash. So what this does is gives you a little description here. This Dax statement will allow a measure as an input value, and then it returns the results if the measure is not blank. If the measure is blank, a Dax statement will be used to force a double dash value. This is then used like in KPI cards where you don't want to show a blank value. So here's a good example of this, right? If I remove this date range here, so let me get rid of these sum of sales, and instead I add a card to the report page. And now if I add my sum of sales to this, hopefully, there we go. If I click on a date that has data, it'll just give me the day data for that information. If I click on a date range in somewhere in the model where there is no data, if I click on this, it'll just say blank. Not very helpful. And a lot of times people don't like it when there's like, you click a date and there's no data there. So this doesn't really make sense. Why would I be showing the word blank if there's no data? I mean, I get it, but that's usually not a good user experience. So then we use this measure to do that. So we're going to go after the measure called sum of sales, but we will then build it in a way that when instead of saying blank, we'll just show dash dash instead. Back over to Dax Generator. I'm going to click on force measures with dash, and then I will put in here the input measure. So our measure, and now we have these little icons here indicating to us that we're talking about measures here. We're going to go after the one called sum of sales. Click on that. It adds my sum of sales measure item here. And then we'll go over here to the template. That's our measure. Then we go to generate. Then we can check our measure that's made correctly here. Sum of sales force to dash dash. That's the name of the measure. So it's already generated the name for us. It's going to give the sum of sales as a test case, and then it's going to do this return statement down below. So this is the logic that's going to allow us to, if that number is blank, then return dash dash. If it is not blank, then return the test case. Fair enough. Create or update this. It's going to ask me where I want to put that measure. Well, since this is talking about the fact table details, I'll put it in the fact table, fact sales. Measure has been updated. Great. So now I have a new measure in this one. It says sum of sales forced to dash dash. Now, again, a best practice for this is you probably never want to build the basic sum measure that has the protection in it, because there are cases where you want the values to return blank, but there are other cases like a card where you want the value to return dash dash. So it makes more sense. So we'll go here to our card. We'll now replace this one with our new measure for sum of sales. Now, if I click on a data point that has data, it will still filter down to the data. But if I click on dates that do not have data, instead of saying the word blank, we now get dash dash instead. So now we have a better user experience. I can click on these random dates and figure out, oh, there's no data there. And then I go all the way down here. And then when I start having data again, eventually, on the 1st of the month, I think on one of these things, let's go here to November 1st. And when I find a data point with data on it, then it will show the value. And again, you can rename all these measures as you want. You just click over here and say sum of sales in the little text field here. So all I did was type in there sum of sales, hit enter, and now it looks just like the other one. And we've protected that data point value against having blank values show up. So kind of a neat little example there as well. All right. Any questions so far? So I'm just going to do I've been talking a lot. I'll do a quick pause right there and just ask for some questions. Mr. Donald.
Hey, Mike. Hey, quick
Hello.
question. Does this handle doing formatting as well? Like, you want to have full numbers with, comma separators and all that?
Yeah, you'll notice here, if I open up the specification here, so I'm not sure if all of it's formatting it automatically for us yet, but we've added the spec to define what this looks like. If I right click on this item, I can say open in VS Code. And what you'll see here is the definition of what a quick measure looks like is actually JSON code. And
Oh,
part of the
cool.
specification is down here in the middle area, you have a formatting object. So I can format the string as a general or whole number or decimal number. And then I can also trigger the options for, do I want to use parentheses for negative values or do I want to use a thousands separator? So we're trying to build into the spec the ability to do that. Now, Dieter is kind of working through features right now, so I'm not sure if all of his features are up to speed yet, but we have the specification is actually a little bit ahead of where his development is.
Right.
So the thought here in the future is, and again, stay tuned, it'll get better as we go here, as we continue investing it. But like the idea here being, we can specify different measure templates and not only tell you what is the format of it, but does it go in a folder? Do we add a description? Right? So that's where things I think get really powerful now is then I can automate more things than just writing the measure and having it appear, right? It's much more valuable to me if I can create a list of measures and drop them all into the same folder with the same name. So that's where I can start seeing myself saving a lot of time, where this thing starts auto doing a lot of the basic things that we want it to do. And it sets not just dropping in the measure, but it configures a lot of it for you automatically. Great question.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions online?
Nothing in the chat window.
Okay, sounds good. I'll keep cruising then. Real quick, Teo, a quick time check. What time do we go till here? So I have a lot more content. I just want to know, I make sure not overextending people's time.
Sure. So we typically go for a couple of hours. So if you can wrap up by 8:15 with maybe some time for questions, that'll be awesome. So we have plenty of time.
We will be done way before that. I've got probably about another 15, 30 minutes of content, and then we'll call it quits and then open it up for questions or other comments, or want to just hack things out. We can go ahead and build our own things if we want as well. So no issues there. Awesome. Great. Plenty of time. All right, so we're done with this now. So let's talk about, okay, we've used the templates. We can see where they're consumed from. So first and foremost, how do you get all the templates? Where does all this stuff come from? So another one that I want to point out here is we have a GitHub page that we use to capture all of this. And again, we want to be very community driven here. We want to make sure that the community feels that they can contribute more and more items into these DAX measures. So we actually have a Git repo, and I'll put this in the chat window. Here's the Git repo. And this is where we're collecting all of the various templates. And so we have a huge, if you want to contribute to the project, if you want to get involved, please do. Write your own DAX statements, bring some stuff together, right? Contribute back to the community, and we're managing this so everyone can get your quick DAX template files. So in here, you'll notice we have a whole section for templates, and we have a couple buckets for folders of just trying to help you organize some of the content. But again, if you click into these things, these are where all the quick measures come from. So what I've done on my version of Dax Generator is I've basically went to the user templates area. I think I went here and then click user templates, open in Explorer. And so you'll see here in the Dax Quick Templates here, I have all the GitHub information. So basically I synchronized the Git repo to my local machine, and that way I can just do a quick Git pull here. So if I go back into Dax Templates, I can right click and say open with Studio Code. And then in here, it should automatically detect that I'm in GitHub and that I have made a modification to my Git. So this way I can modify, update, look at all my templates in real time. So if there were any changes, I can just automatically synchronize them, and I get all the templates done to my local machine. So maybe in the future, we'll do a better job integrating that right into the tool. But for now, it's all controlled by Git. Okay. Moving forward with that, let's build our own. Let's deconstruct what's going on here. So each template that you have and you've been seeing kind of like the user interface side of it. So star ratings 1 to 5. When I click open in VS Code, there's actually, it's just JSON. It's just a JSON object that we're building. And all of the information that you would need to be able to generate that template comes from this file. Okay, you know me. If you've ever used my theme generators, I'm not a big fan of people writing their own JSON. So because of that, I've actually built a tool that allows you to build your own theme files. So now we go back over to the browser here, and we go over to dax.powerbi.tips. And at this location, you'll see that we have a really nifty web page where we are able to go in, and this is how you would create your template. This is how you build your template from scratch. So let's go again through a very basic example here. Let's do a quick simple sum again, but we're going to build our measure entirely from scratch. We're going to build it all here, create the template, and then use the template. So I'll just show you how to use this tool as well. So let's first start out with desktop. So when I'm building these kind of quick templates, my first and foremost thing that I do is I almost always start with measures that I've already written in a data model. So let's go down to our total units sold. We'll start with, again, a very simple example to get going. What I would do is I would typically copy this information out, copy that, and then I'll go over here to the Dax Templates or dax.powerbi.tips. And here we'll type in the template name. So the template name would be a total of a single column. And then you could add a description here, right? What is this going to do? Pick a column from your data model, make a measure to sum the entire column. Okay. Then you have this option number 1. So you have these things called parameters. So you can think of these objects as things you're going to inject into the DAX statement. Now I'm going to come back to this because I've already copied the full DAX statement directly into my clipboard. I'll go over here and then I'll paste the entire thing right here. Units sold equals sum of this. So I'm actually going to grab the latter half of this, cut that out, and drop it here in the expression area. So now I have the measure. This is the name of the measure, and then this is the actual measure that I'm going to use down below here. So I put it here because I like seeing the format of it. One thing you'll notice right away, on the right-hand side, you can see it's actually writing out the DAX expression. This is the name of the title of that measure, and then here's the output of that measure down below. Okay, cool, great. So what about the parameters part, right? So parameter number 1, right, this is what we're going to inject down below. So I'm going to leave this one alone, and let's call this is going to be my table and column name. So what I want you to do is go to the model, pick the table and column name together as a single unit. There's not going to be any default values set. We're going to leave that blank. And you probably want a description for it, right? What does this mean? Select a column from the data model. All right, so what is this going to be? We're going to, since we're talking about date column items, it's not a number, it's not a date. We don't need any special formatting. So it's going to be just a string data type. It's just a bit of text. And now you have the ability of picking out what you want to do. Do you want to list just the measure name? Do you want to list the table and column combination? So when you pick a column, it'll return the column and the table name? Or do you only want to return the table name or just the name of the column? So these are different elements that you can select from the data model. These are allowing you to inject into the DAX generator a specific format of items here. So what we're going to use here is table column because we're going to give the table name and the column name as one entire object. So what we'll do down here is now that we have parameter 1 set up, we can go copy that. And we can go down here to the middle and we will then replace this statement. This is what we're going to replace. And we're also talking about a total of something, so we can also adjust the name of it to be that dynamic here. So total of, and then I can underscore the parameter here. So this will give me the total of the column and table name listed as part of the measure, and then inject it directly into the measure itself. So I'm going to actually adjust this here. I'm going to just do something like this, call it table name column name. And the reason I do that is because when I look over here, and again, it's reformatting this, right? So it's auto replacing, this is the text that we're going to inject into parameter 1. This is the output of that. So you can take the verification on the above step and go down below and verify that this is in fact calculating what you want it to calculate correctly. All right, we should be all good there. I'm not going to worry about any formatting at this point. And then you can grab a tagging. So this is a sum. So this is an aggregation. Just call it a total. Authors, Mike Carlo. If you want to add instructions, I highly recommend it. Blah, 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 blah. And then if you want a support URL, you can say https dax.powerbi.tips. You can add anything you want there, any kind of URLs that would make sense for people to visit. When I click download file, it'll then create this very nasty GUID looking file name. Don't worry, that won't be a big deal. We can then minimize all of our data windows here, and I'm going to open up, I missed it. I'm going to open up the Dax Quick Measure item here. So external tools, open up Dax Generator. There's Dax Generator. And now what I can do is if I just grab this JSON file that I just made and drop it right here, it'll then automatically add my new measure, a total of a single column. So there's my measure. It gives me all the parameters that I need right here. I can then click on my table name, go down to sales table, and go to our fact sales units sold. And there it goes. It now creates the exact right naming of that input parameter. And then I can go over to the generate template. And there we go. So now I have everything written out. Now you notice here I have the extra quotes here. You may want that. That may make sense. Or if you want, you can then adjust this real time. So I can go in here. I can delete out the column name if I don't want it in there. Like, facts of units sold. I can get rid of the measure brackets, and then I can adjust it here. So I have all the information I need. Then I can click create or update. And when I create that, it'll ask me where to put it. Fact sales, boom, done. Go back over to our data model, and there we go. We now have another measure in here. Total of units sold, right there. That's it. So we've made our first measure in our data files there. So that's kind of cool. The only other thing we're adding here, and again, we've done kind of some simple examples here, right? We've made a calendar, we've made a table, we've made a couple measures. Well, this is all just code. Why not make these things do extra stuff, right? Make it easier for us to add a lot of measures to a model. Well, this is where we come into our bonus section here. So what we've done here is Dieter is actually working on code, and this is kind of hot off the press. It's an early release for him. Excuse me, my throat's getting dry. Let me remove all these measures because I was doing some testing early here. So let me get rid of all this stuff. Imagine with me that you are building a data model and you have a numerical column, and you would like to have a whole bunch of automatically generated statistics about that column, right? I want to know what was the minimum value, what was the maximum value, all the different general data discovery items here. And maybe you have a lot of columns you want to do this to, sales or other columns in here as well. So you might want to be able to repeat this same calculation on many different columns. So what we've added now, oops, cancel. Okay, get rid of that one. All right, perfect. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to go to the units sold column, and we're going to add a bunch of summarization statistics to that. So we're going to go back into Dax Generator, and you'll see here this one called Simple Aggregates to Build Multiple Measures All at One Time. So this is where we can now create, in this list, 6 measures, all doing different things of a single column. So we're going to pick a table name and column name, and then each one of the measures will do a min, a max, average, sum of records, or a distinct count of all those records. So let's build this template. Go to the table name. I'm going to go into the table called fact sales. The column for that table. Let's go all the way back down here to fact sales, and we'll go in here and say grab the one that's called units sold. That's the one I'm looking for, so I'll grab that one. And with that, we can click generate. And so you'll see now, I see one of the formulas called minimum of units sold. And if I click this little 2 arrows now that have shown up here, this little left and right arrow here, it allows me to toggle forward to the next formula or backwards to the previous formula. So if I click the next arrow, you'll see that it changes to max. Max of the column name. Great. If I go again, average units sold there. And so I can keep going through all of the formulas, sum, count, distinct count of units sold. Some of these metrics may make sense, some of them may not, but at least we have all the information that we need. So now what I'll do is I'll hit create or update all of them. And now I'll ask you where I want to put each one of the measures. So I'm going to put them all in the calculations table. So calcs. Yep. Calcs. Yep. Put it in the calculation table. Yep. Keep going. Calcs. Calcs. Boom. There we go. So with that, we now have all of our measures being added directly into our single table. So now I've just made 5 measures all very quickly there. And so now if I grab my product table, I can now grab, those are my products. I can now grab all our new measures that we created and drop them in here very quickly. So now we can see what is the sum, the minimum. I don't see that one in there for some reason. I must have missed something there, but there we go. So now we have all of our summary statistics. So I have the minimum value, the count of all records, the average number of units sold, max, and then the sum in total. So there we go. Making 5 measures super fast and just drop them in there really quickly. So how do we build that inside the Dax generator? Well, we'll do a very similar process that we did earlier. We have this concept of load a single column like we had previously. And then we have our parameter for the column name that we're going to use. And you'll see down here in the bottom section here, there's this area called encoding. So the encoding section is really around the ability to be able to add this item in here as well. And then what you can do is you can add a secondary encoding down below. So when I add a secondary encoding, I add this. And what this does is it adds another Dax statement. So we're making another statement on top of this. And the neat thing I think is interesting here is when you do this kind of information, you could actually create multiple tables, right? You could create a date table and then add a calculated column and then add a measure to that information. So now if you have this multiple encoding aspect, you can actually sequence up multiple items in there that would automatically allow you to stack those things in there together as well. So here we go. This is your next measure. You could then do the same thing here. So this could be, count of, and then we can just grab our parameter count of parameter 1. So I'll copy that, dump that right in there, count of this. And then we can write our formula. So I'm going to write it all from scratch here. Count. And then we're going to drop in our parameter again, parameter 1. Close that off. And then you can add a description here. It is counts the number of items, whatever that would be. Hide the measure by default? No. Sure, it's general. And then with this, we've now made our second expression. So again, we can go back over to our evaluate expressions part of the window here, and then we can then again see that this table and column name is being injected, and it's doing it again for total and for the count. And you just kind of can keep going. You can just kind of keep making more and more expressions by adding another encoding, and another encoding. And so that continually encodes more and more information there for you. All right, cool. So with that, I think we're just about at time. So this kind of really wraps up, the core of the presentation. If there are any questions, things that are specifically answers you want me to kind of look at, I can take a deep dive on some stuff. Sure,
Mike. So we got one question here by Bruce. He's asking, do you have a template for weighted averages?
Ah, gotcha. I'm not sure if we have one. Let's check here. We have a lot of time-based calculations. Simple sum, average, min, max. I don't think I have I don't have one in here yet for weighted averages, but I think actually Bruce, I think, is spot on. Actually, sorry, you are on, Theo, with being able to create your own measure. So there are some quick measures that are in desktop already. So if I wanted to do a weighted average of something, I could right-click on this table, click New Quick Measure. And I have a little bit of grief with some of this, right? So there's a weighted averaging portion of this, but the downside of this is if you're using time-based calculations, you need to have auto date time on. So in some cases, when you're using this, if you're using time-based calculations, the regular quick measures does not work very well for you. So I think you have weighted average per category. So this would be your weighted average element here. So that was where you would apply that. And then you can go through here and fill out what your values mean. So you go here. I think if we did, fact sales, your weighted average would be, well, we're going to, for lack of a better term, I'll bring the number of units, right? So units sold, maybe these are there, and then our sales maybe is what the weight is. But this one you have to actually add in the category, so some sort of categorical value. So let's just do it by, I don't know, this is not very good, but let's see if it'll let me do it with product. So when I click OK, this is what it calculates out for you to be able to do your category values and then doing the weighted average by each of those items. So this already produces this for you. But the neat part of what you've done here is, well, this is, again, just DAX, right? So we can actually take this out and you can kind of retool this one. This could be an easily template. So again, thinking through DAX and how you would templatize these things. The name you'd want to adjust maybe, and then you might adjust this values list here. So that values list might be something you would use in a DAX template. And you can see here, fact sales sold, one. Fact sales is another input item, and fact sales. So if you even taking this as standard DAX statement, this is already produced for you. You could essentially grab this guy, go back over to here. Let's just refresh the page. You can start from scratch. Drop it right in here. Here's my expression formula. All right, so I'm going to rip out the first part of the equation here. We'll get rid of this part. Cut that out. Put that as our value here. There's my formula. And then I can go through and say, how many variables do I need, right? So I need one for dim product, like this so. So we can grab that section here. And that would be our first variable. So this would be average. What are we doing here? We're averaging. Thanks, Google. Get out of here. Doing. Oh, is it weighted average?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll just call it weighted average. And then I'll leave that, whatever you want here. And then you have your first parameter. So this one would be our category. So this might be category grouping. Value. We can grab our parameter 1, copy that. It would be a string, and we're going to have a table and column. And we would drop that in right here. Twink, like that. So that's our first parameter. Next one, we would add another parameter right beneath that. And so this will be our parameter number 2. So I'll adjust the value of this. So it's our second parameter. This one, we're going to be able to go grab, so you're scanning through here. We need now fact sales or the unit sold. So this would be maybe your grouping, right? So what is the weighted portion of the averaging? So this might be your weighted value. So again, it's a string. It's going to be a table and column. Grab that parameter number 2. Drop him right in here. Put spaces around so it's a little easier to read. And the last two, it's actually a repeated value in 2 different spots. So this would be like your numerical value. So we'll add another parameter number 3. And then we can also call this is multiplier, whatever that may be. Again, I'm just kind of spitballing here, but add that in. We have parameter number 3 now. Copy that guy, and then we can drop him in wherever he needs to be. So these last 2 items here, one in the middle there, and the same thing down here at the very bottom. Sum of that other thing, drop him in as well. So now we've got it. Now we've got this thing fully parameterized. Now the cool part is now you can go read the equation here and make sure that it makes sense, right? There we go. So now we can say, okay, do we have all the right category groupings, right? So our category grouping is now applied there. Good. Weighted value, yeah, that looks good. Multipliers over there, great. Sum of the multiplier, great. So now we've got all this information. We can then export it out. Decimal number, say no, yes. This is going to be a totals, authored by Mike Carlo. Instructions. And then any support URLs if you want those as well. Okay, unload this file. And with that, we should be able to basically achieve the same results as the Dax Quick measure. So we go over here, drag and drop this right in here. Weighted average now appears as one of our formulas. Great. And then we go through and just build what we want to build. So our category grouping, whatever you want. Country this time. Your weighted value. We'll do units sold. And you could weight that by your other sales price. So sales, but I don't have that column showing, so that's why it's not showing it here. I think I can I toggle it on or off? I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's showing more items if it's hidden or not. So must be a bug for right now. Anyways, that's kind of essentially what you do. Once you have all that done, you could click generate, and then it would then create your formula right here. Good question. Other questions, other things.
Any other questions for Mike? Anybody? I'm going to ask you one question, Mike, if you don't mind.
Yeah, help yourself.
So the external tools, besides the popular ones, the Dax Studio, Tabular Editor that I saw you also using, what are the favorite external tools you have and you frequently use?
Yeah, good question. So the ones that I use all the time, there's always the staple of tools that are out there. So Dax Studio, definitely use that one a lot. Tabular Editor, yep, use that one all the time. Other external tools that I use Christian Wade's ALM Toolkit, another one that's a kind of a big staple. That one's the one that I use fairly frequently. If you do any kind of metadata translations, Kai Uncroft has made a metadata translator. And what this does is allows you to go to the Microsoft linguistics machine learning API, and will allow you to go into a Power BI model, grab all of the various columns, headers, titles, names, all of the items in your model, and will actually make a language translation on top of your data model for you using the API. So super cool, really neat tool there as well. I use a number of like kind of off the grid kind of APIs as well. So one that I find very helpful is this one from James Bartlett, where he copies the server name and port. So if you connect to your Power BI data models using other external tools, you need to copy out the server port number. This is a nice one that copies that server port to your clipboard, and you can go copy paste it various places with this tool. Michael Kowalski has got an interesting one. I don't use it a ton, but he's got a very interesting report analyzer tool where it analyzes your thin report or your reports and helps produce like all the details about the graphics of your report.
Okay.
This is the one I think I use probably by far the most here, is the one from Steve Campbell called Hot Swap Connections. So this is the idea of, I have a model on my machine where I want to, so I have the star model up on my machine here locally, right? So I have a model that's connected here. If I go build another data set to something in the service, so I do file and new, let's do a new report here. If I go into PowerBI.com, the service, and build a live connection to report, I cannot switch it again. It's stuck. So once you live connect into something that's in PowerBI.com, there's no way for you to like re-engineer that connection and point it at a local data model in case you want to do some local development. So I'm a subscriber of the model and thin report layer here. So I'll do a get data. Hopefully I'm signed into the right URL here. So get data from the Power Platform. We're going to go right to the Power BI data sets and hit connect. And what this will be doing is it'll go grab all the various data sets that I have up here. And I think I have star model. So I'll go to the star model here. And if I clicked connect to this thing, create a connection, It'll then bring in all of my normal data connections. And so this will live connect to powerbi.com, grab me my data connection and bring everything in. Now, great. But if I want to look at my data model locally, let's say I'm using the thin model and data modeling section here. Oh boy, it's taking forever now. Must have to spin up that model for some reason. Hopefully it's still there. When it comes back around, if it ever does, I already have the star model open on my local machine. That's what we've been building here, right? So let's say I'm doing local development. I'm making changes to that model, and I need to look at this model as opposed to the one in the service. Once this thing loads, goodness gracious, it's taking forever. It's like it's timing out. I'd be able to use that external connector. So the idea here is, well, it came back together here. I'd be able to use that hot swap connection to swap out that connection and use something different instead. So that's really the intent there as well.
Okay. And the ALM toolkit, what do you use that for?
Good question. So Azure Lifecycle Toolkit, ALM Toolkit, is it allows you to do diff compares. So the ALM Toolkit is allowing you to say, look, I have a model here locally on my computer and one in the service, or 2 Power BI files locally. I can actually compare them side by side and figure out what is the difference between 2 different data models. So it's actually like a code compare directly to a star model. So like, for example, here, I have star model open here in Power BI Desktop. Well, my target may be something in the powerbi.com service. So if I want to change this, I could say my workspace would be something in powerbi.com. So if I go back over here to Power BI, then hopefully I have a workspace here with something that's in premium. So let's go here, let's search for a star model, star. There, star model with 2 facts. Okay, so it's in this workspace here. So demo, James Bartlett. Okay, perfect. So I'll go here to this demo workspace. I can click on the settings here, premium. You see that I have the Power BI API, so I can copy that to my clipboard, go back here, and then connect to that. Oops. That's connected to it actually correctly. So now what I'm doing is I'm connecting to my local Power BI file and also connecting to a file that lives inside powerbi.com. If I click the data set here, it's going to make me log in. I'll log in with my Windows identity. And once it logs me in, I can see my star data models there, and then I can click OK. And now what it will do is it'll load my local data model and the one in the service and show me line by line what's different. So this is immensely powerful because I can go through and say, oh, look, this new table called calcs is new. These measures are brand new. And so I can actually look down below here at the code and see line by line what is exactly different. Here's the exact expression and the line differences that we see in each one of these. If you go down here a little bit lower, you can see that there's some new relationships that were added. These are contained in the left-hand side, which is the locals host. That's the one I'm looking at locally. And the one on the right has nothing there. Therefore, it's all blanked out in red. There's also some here that are sum of sales, total units sold. I'm trying to find one that's changed here. Okay, here's another good one. So in this one, sum of cost of goods, it's the same in both data models. You can see right here, it's in both versions of the local one and the one in the service. However, the format string has changed. So you can see right here, I somehow adjusted something that changed what that was doing. So now I can see line by line exactly what changed on every single element. And then
it's just for visualization. Can you propagate those changes?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
So once you do this, you would hit a I think I would do validate selection. So what it'll do is it'll go through and it'll try to validate which things you can update and which things you cannot. So right here, this one says, hey, I can't delete this Excel file location because more than 2 objects depend on it. So I should probably not deploy those changes. So let me cancel this again. So let me go up here. Let's get rid of a couple delete commands here. So let's get rid of this expression. Let's just not use that. So let's skip this one. So if I right click or click on it and say skip, it will do nothing. If there's a whole bunch of things here called creating. So if maybe I don't want to create anything, maybe I only want to update. So what I can do now is I can go up here to the selection controls and say skip all objects missing in target. So that means the location. So if it's missing altogether, skip them. So now it's skipping all the changes that are not in the other file. I'm only looking at updates. And this delete statement here, yeah, let's get rid of that one. Skip that as well. Okay, so now I have a whole bunch of updates coming. Then I can validate my selection. Again, it'll go through and say, yeah, I think we're happy now. All right, good. And then what I can do is I can click update. And it says, are you sure you want to update the target? So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the code that I have locally and push all that up to the cloud. So hit yes. And it's now going to deploy all those changes directly to the model in the service. And now there we go. That's it. So done. It's happy. And now if I refresh the targets again, all those items we originally had as updating, we'll now see that they now all match. See, this one's now matching these other calculations. So there's not nearly as many updates for this one. So all those format changes that I had for formatting strings are now matching. They're now the same in both models. Cool. So just a really interesting tool doing that. Be aware though, when you do updates like this, as soon as you do an update like this, you now have modified a data model by the XML endpoint, and it does restrict you a bit more about you can't download that data model again. So once you update it this way, you're no longer able to update things back down to the local model. There's other you can also have other things in here too. I don't think I don't have any tables with incremental partition stuff as well, but you can actually change that as well. Or you can say, let me cancel this one more time. You go to options here. You can actually compare all partitions as well. So when you load data, if you're loading things with incremental refresh, you can compare each partition as well, in addition to not only the whole table. So if I click that option, I'll hit OK, and then I'll compare it again. There should be another section in here. Let's go to some of these tables here. If now that it's comparing the partitions as well, it's actually going to look through each of these partitions and each definition of each partition. So not a big deal now because I'm loading every table as import and there's no incremental refresh. But this becomes a much bigger deal when you're loading data tables with incremental refreshing partitions. One table could have hundreds of partitions in it, and you may not want to update those, or you may want to compare what you're doing locally or between two different models to get the partition level alone. So yeah, really powerful tool. Really like this one as well. Pretty slick idea here.
Cool. Any other questions, community? Guess not. Well, Mike, thank you so much for doing this for us. It was great.
Pretty deep and quick and getting in there right away. So yeah, that's about it. We got about an hour long kind of deep dive into what Dax measures and what Dax measures can do and Dax Quick Templates. Again, my encouragement there is go play with the tool, go install Dax Quick Templates, start playing with some of the stuff we have out there. Odds are you're already writing Dax measures that are complex in nature already, and you may want to reuse them. So, there's some good use cases around where I would maybe use this, right? One might be is I'm a leader in my team. I have a number of other team members that are using Dax measures. This is a way where you can create a library internal to your company around what are the standard calculations you would want to use in your company, and you could share it broadly with inside your team, right? So whenever we go somewhere, here's the calculations we're going to use. This is how we calculate various things inside our company. You could share those calculations out, or you can just share best practices with your company, right? Here's how I would do like the gentleman was asking earlier, here's how we would do a weighted average calculation. Here's how we would do XYZ other calculations in there. If you go back, if you look on the community at Power BI community, so you go community.powerbi.com, you'll see that there is in the community area, there's a gallery. And inside this galleries area, there's actually a quick measures gallery down here below. And inside the quick measures gallery, there's 801 other quick measures that are out on the internet. Now, I haven't had time to go through and add them all to my tool yet, but you could see the value here of going through and finding other measures from the community where these are all, again, this is the star ratings one I looked at earlier, but there's a ton of them, right? There's a whole bunch of things in here that could be technically translated into quick measure templates. So if you want to learn Dax, if you want to get a little bit more comfortable in that space, help me out. Pick one or two of these that you find are valuable or fun, build out a template or two, and submit a repo request, and we'll slowly add them in there. So, how great would it be for us to have 800 quick templates, kind of all to pick from, and then I'd rather have too many templates than not enough. So the goal here, or the task back to you guys all, is spend some time in it, learn it up, and see if you can create some of your own templates and leverage them inside the tool as well.
This is the call for action for the community.
Exactly right.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Have a great
Thanks,
evening.
Mike.
Thank you guys for attending. I'll see you next month.
Take care.
Thanks. This
You
is great.
all.
Bye-bye.
Tomorrow, Mike.
See ya.